Hello, everyone. Forest Focus as Nottingham Forest face what feels like a massive game against Leeds United at the bottom of the Premier League on Sunday. Leeds have started well at home but struggled away, so what will they offer at the City Ground? Joining me to tell us more about their season so far and the state of their squad is the Leeds United reporter for the Yorkshire Evening Post, Graham Smyth. Graham, good to have you back on the podcast, mate. How are you today?
I'm all right, thanks, Matt. How are you?
Yes, not too bad, not too bad. Quite nervous for this game, to be honest. So yeah, hopefully you're going to make me feel better about it. What have you made of the season so far for Leeds coming off the back of promotion? I think you're 16th, aren't you, or something like that?
Yeah, I think they've offered some reassurance in terms of being competitive in the Premier League because I think the big worry was that this season would go exactly like the last two had gone for newly promoted sides, that they just wouldn't lay a glove on opposition, they wouldn't have it physicality wise to be Premier League teams, and I think Russell Martin was interviewed after he lost his job at Southampton, and he said if he could have his time again, although I'm not sure anyone would be inviting him to do that at Southampton, but if he could have his time again, he would do the darker side of the game, the nastier side, more physicality in recruitment. And I think Leeds United were very keen to learn the lessons from those teams and those clubs, and they did kind of go for physicality. They went for being solid, resolute, difficult to play against, a team full of runners. And you can see the plan in action over the start of the season. There have been games where it hasn't worked and they've maybe got the tactics wrong a little bit and they've maybe tried to play when they shouldn't have played. But in the games when it's worked, it has looked like a plan that could plot a way to survival.
Yeah, I remember. Sorry, Leeds have got our 16th, I should say, for listeners, 11 points from 10 games. We'll get into home versus away. I remember when you were on for our season preview, you felt like they had a good chance, but they needed to add quality in attack. I can't remember if they did actually do that or not. Do you see it in the squad or not?
This is the major bone of contention with Leeds United, and it is a stick that they will be beaten with all season. Because whilst they did bring in Noah Okafor on the left wing, who does look like a Premier League player, does look like he's got moments in him and game-changing ability in him, they didn't go and get the right winger number 10 blend that they really needed, that they really wanted. They had a bit of a calamity there, really, and some of it was their own fault, some of it wasn't. They went for Igor Pajon, who strung them along all the way to an agreed deal, an agreed wage, all of that, and then asked for 24 more hours. And that was basically so that Marseille could put together one final offer for him. And he went to Marseille. And he would have been a real difference maker, I think. We've seen him in the Champions League this season. He's showing that he's that kind of player they needed. When they didn't get him, they went for Buonanotte, and it looked like they'd done a deal for him. They had a flight booked, they had a medical arranged, and then Chelsea came in, and he went to Chelsea. And then that left them in a bit of a bind in the final weekend before the window closed. Fulham gave them reason to believe they could get Harry Wilson, and it looked like they'd got a deal in place for him. Again, a flight was booked, and then Fulham changed their minds, and Leeds ended the window empty-handed when it came to that final piece of the attacking puzzle. And it is costing them. They don't have, as Farke continues to say himself, that kind of the same individual quality, the same 1v1 quality that other teams have. And it's something they're going to have to deal with, unless in January, which is never a market that you really want to be buying in, unless they can bring someone in then. They're going with a squad that is light when it comes to attacking firepower.
What's the goal threat then? I know Calvert-Lewin's been a Premier League player. I don't know if he still is really. Is he the main threat, or are you looking like set pieces and things like that?
He's not been enough of a threat when it comes to goals. The problem is it's almost the Patrick Bamford thing all over again. A player who's very, very good at holding the ball up, very good at neat interchanges of play and bringing others into the game. Calvert-Lewin's very, very good in the air. He's very good at being a platform that allows Leeds to play higher up the pitch than they probably would be able to with other strikers in their squad. But he's not doing it when it comes to finishing off moves. He has had chances. There's been games when the service to him has been pretty bleak and you let him away with it. But there was a run of maybe 5 chances that were good chances that he didn't take any of them. And that's a big difference. At this level in the Premier League, a newly promoted team cannot really afford to have 5 good chances spurned, because it likely means that you're not going to win that game, you're not going to draw that game, and it could be the difference between staying up and not. It's hard to always blame Calvert-Lewin because sometimes, like I said, the service has been scant, and there are others in the team that need to step up as well. But goals is definitely the big problem for this team. But they have at least started to look a lot more dangerous from set pieces than they did previously.
Oh, I don't want to hear that. If you've seen us defending set pieces, you're probably going to get at least one goal from it. I mentioned a couple of times there, home versus away. I think all your points have come at home apart from Wolves away. The other games you've drawn blanks. I mean, admittedly, Arsenal, not many teams are going to score there. Fulham, Burnley, and Brighton are the other teams I think you've played. What's the story behind that? Do you think is it tactics? Is it lack of quality? Why the struggles away?
It's an interesting one because it's not one rule across all of the away games. Arsenal, they probably would have lost anyway, but Daniel Farke didn't help himself with his team selection and his approach. And I think he learned a lesson from that because they did then start to play a more direct style, start to go to Calvert-Lewin, go longer a little bit more, protect themselves a bit more. And I felt like he was getting it right. They went to Fulham and they more than matched Fulham for 92, 93 minutes, something like that. And they did have chances, but at the very least, they deserved a draw from that performance. And then a cross comes in and the first defender was up with an attacker, didn't get it, and it literally bounces off Gabriel Goodmanson's head. He has no time to direct it, and it goes into the back of that, and they lose that game. So that was one that you kind of they got the performance right, they got the tactics right, and they were simply undone by a freak on goal. With the Burnley game, the performance wasn't good, and they did the worst possible thing you can do against Burnley, which is concede the first goal, and then give Burnley something to defend, which they do very, very well. And they lost that game 2-0, and you'd probably say it was deserved. It wasn't good. And Brighton, similarly, they played into Brighton's hands a little bit. They didn't go direct enough or often enough, and they gave the ball away cheaply, and they conceded the same goal 3 times. And Brighton are so good in transition. They have such amazing individual quality that if you do give the ball away in your own third, then you're in trouble. Welbeck is having an unbelievable time of it, scoring goals. Minte is just a world beater, and Jorginho Rutter, as Leeds know, is a wonderful player when he gets a bit of space and a bit of time in the area. So they played into Brighton's hands and lost that game. But there is this feeling growing among Leeds fans that Farke is not getting the tactics spot on away from home. He's not quite getting his approach right. They're not making it as ugly and as physical and as direct as they should be away from home, and they've kind of caused a few of their own problems.
How do you think they'll go about this one then? Because under Dyche, we've been, more back to front, do the ugly side of the game, still pose a threat on the counter-attack because of the quality we've got, but it is more a physical match with Dyche. So what are you expecting from Leeds in this one?
It's hard to say. If I was Daniel Farke, I would look at the best performances Leeds have had this season and the way he set the team up and what it was that brought them joy. I think about the way they played against Bournemouth, for example. They were struggling early on with their passing game against Bournemouth. So they went over the top of the press, they played long, and they gave Bournemouth a horrible time of it because they actually got bodies in and around Calvert-Lewin and they played off him. That was a home game at Elland Road. But that feels to me like the recipe for potential success. Now, it does mean, obviously, you're going physical and direct against a master of the art. But I think that this Leeds team is actually set up and sculpted to be able to do that. That is survivor ball, isn't it? You play yourself into so many problems in the Premier League when you try and play pretty football. If you're not absolutely bang on and if you don't have the best technicians on the pitch, then you create your own problems. And I think Leeds recruited so specifically to make themselves more robust, more physical, more direct. They recruited runners that I don't know why you wouldn't play to those strengths. I think after the Brighton game, I could see Leeds being a little bit more direct again. But there is this part of me that thinks Daniel Farke will see Forest, he'll see Sean Dyche, and he'll think, well, we can probably cause them problems playing with passing football. So we'll have to wait and see on what approach he goes for.
Let's take a word of thanks to Trent Navigation. As we've been saying, Forest v Leeds on Sunday. There is a post-match show with the Fun Boy too. So head back to Nav after the game. Free entry, first come, first serves. And obviously enjoy the build-up pre-match with Fothers before you head down to the City Ground. And thanks as ever to the Nav for their support. You mentioned Farke a few times. The other question I remember asking you pre-season was doubts over him as a Premier League quality manager. I see the odd Leeds tweet flash up from fans saying, one I saw was like, "Oh, we're going to wait to sack him till we're in the relegation zone." Clearly, a few doubts creeping in. What's your view on, or how are fans viewing him first of all, more than you're viewing him?
Daniel Farke has never really shaken off the critics that emerged in his first season at Leeds, who kind of threw that there's only one plan, it's plan A, and there's nothing else at him. They didn't think he could change again with his substitutions, or that his substitutions were too predictable and formulaic. He always waited till the 70th minute. And of course, they didn't go up that first season. Russell Martin seemed to have his number a little bit. Last season, if ever they even drew a game, the grumbles would emerge again. And lots of people would say things like, "We're never going up. There's no way we're going up. It's playoffs again." People wanted him sacked at various points last season. They got 100 points. They nearly scored 100 goals. They in most championship seasons, they would have been out of sight by the last day. It just so happened that Burnley were unbelievably good at defending and also got 100 points, and it took a last-minute goal to win the league. But he got them up. And yet still this season, even after the win against West Ham, there were grumbles over the performance and people thinking Farke hadn't got it right. Because in that second half against West Ham, they did play a bit more of a negative style. They did sit back. They did concede territory and possession to West Ham, when really West Ham were there to be taken. That West Ham at 2-0 down, they're a side that you could go and put 3, 4, 5 past. Certainly the way Leeds were playing first half. So Farke's never really quietened or silenced the critics fully. Even in his best moments, they've been there. And there was that talk at the end of last season that emerged in national newspapers that the 49ers were thinking of getting rid of him. They ended up backing him, and they went with him again for the Premier League. I don't get the feeling that the 49ers have ever been quite as unhappy with Farke as sections of the fan base. I also don't know if he'll ever manage to get rid of those critics and their criticism. I think that might just be his reality at Leeds United until he leaves.
So if, and it's a big if, and we'll get into this a little bit more, but if Forest do win the game, would Leeds fans turn on him, do you think? Would the pressure really be on him going into the international break, or is it too soon for that?
The problem you have is an international break is a void. Clubs are not very good these days at filling that void by giving their local media loads of interviews or putting players up or changing the narrative. So the void just becomes something that people yell into. And when Leeds go into an international break on the back of a defeat, the mood tends to be very sour. If they went into the back of it on the back of 2 defeats on the bounce, I would imagine it would be very sour. But there are a lot of fans who are a little bit more level-headed when it comes to Farke, or a little bit more in his camp, and think that he deserves a crack and he deserves time, and that 10, 11 games is not enough time. And they also think that he's done quite well this season because they're not in the drop zone as we speak, and the objective this season is simply to stay up. I think it would depend on the manner of the defeat if they did lose to Forest. If it was similar to the Brighton game, then I think Farke would be facing a lot of criticism indeed. But what we know of the 49ers is difficult to say because they've never sacked a manager at Leeds. They have sacked a manager at Glasgow Rangers, and that took what felt like an eternity for that to actually happen before they got rid of Russell Martin. They could have done it much, much sooner, and they didn't. So I would imagine they'll be a little bit more patient than perhaps other owners in the Premier League might be.
Just sticking with perceptions on this game, then. We've talked about it all week. We're recording this just before we play Graz. So I said that's very much secondary. This Leeds game's everything for the reasons you say about international break void. So we're viewing it as certainly mustn't lose. And realistically, we probably need to win the game when you look at the league table. How are you viewing this game in terms of, a draw's okay? Or are you looking at this one, or Leeds fans looking at this one as one they think they can win?
I think they'll be looking at it and thinking they can win because of the way Forest have started the season. And and also because of the way Leeds have performed in certain games this season. The question is, do they have the quality to make the difference, in the attacking areas? And also, has Sean Dyche had enough time with this Forest side to make them a bit more resolute? When you look at set pieces this season, there's just been an incredible combination of Sean Longstaff delivering and Joe Rodon getting first contact on the ball. It's like this weird magnetic partnership that's suddenly emerged out of nowhere. I mean, Longstaff wasn't even taking corners and free kicks to start the season. It only emerged maybe 4 or 5 games ago. He started becoming a taker, and he would find Joe Rodon's head with incredible regularity, and Rodon has become a real goal threat. That would be an area that I think they'll look to target. They might not even have to win a corner. They might just be gifted a corner erroneously by the officials, because that seems to happen quite a lot to Nottingham Forest. But they will certainly be targeting set pieces. And how long has Sean Dyche been in the door? Has he had enough time to make them as good at defending and attacking set pieces as he can with a team? I don't know. We'll have to see.
Just on Forest, then, it's interesting to get an outside perspective. I saw a stat on the BBC website the other day about team in our position almost always go down after such a bad start. But there seems to be a perception, that we've discussed this a bit. Forest are going to be okay. I still think we'll be okay. Do you, when you look at the pressure on Leeds to survive, are you looking at Forest as a team you think are going to go down? Or do you think with Dyche in time over 38 games, we'll be all right?
I think it's a very smart move bringing Sean Dyche in, because I can now see a route for Forest to stay up. From a Leeds point of view, the hope is that Forest stay in it long enough that they're entrenched in it, and they're one of those teams that could go. You'd hope the same about Burnley. Wolves, I think, are the biggest kind of safest bet for relegation. I mean, they are absolutely honking. When they played against Leeds, they were terrible. And from what I've seen of them in other games this season, they have been terrible. And West Ham, similarly, were a very, very bad team when they came to Elland Road. So there's a few candidates in there, and the more candidates, the better. I think for Leeds, they've got to view this game as a chance to just keep Forest in there, for at least the next spell, and give Sean Dyche a little bit more work to do. The bigger the gap you can create between yourself and any other team down there is a wonderful thing, even at this stage of the season. So they'll view this as an opportunity, but I think there will be some kind of nerves or unease about the fact that Dyche has gone in there, because now I think everyone thinks Forest have a chance of staying up.
Thank you very much to the second sponsors of today's show, Streamline Digital. If you are a business that is small, medium, large, as long as you've got over 5 employees, they could be the people for you to streamline the way your business operates. As you'll see on screen, if things aren't working smoothly, they're the people for you. Too many apps, lots of manual re-entry, too much duplication across your business. Are you worried about AI? I think we all are. I certainly am. Then do get in touch with them. Get your free advice. Scan the QR code on screen. The free advice, by the way, is a 45 to 60-minute session where they will help you out. So, as mentioned, if you're looking to streamline your business, make it work more efficiently, then get in touch with Streamline Digital. Excellent. Anything you want to add on the game that I've forgotten? Any kind of Leeds relevant points that you would make to our listeners?
I don't think so specifically, Leeds. I think when I always view these games, particularly at the City Ground, as games that are going to have a really good atmosphere and games that will probably lend themselves to some excitement, because I'm not expecting a particularly attractive game, but I would imagine that both teams could probably cause each other problems. So I think we might be in for a little bit of action, possibly a bit of excitement, and I would expect it to be a tight game as well, which also kind of lends itself to atmosphere and tension. You've got an away support that are going to be very, very, very loud. Forest fans, I suppose, will be a little bit louder again now that they've got a new manager in and they've got a bit of hope and belief about the place. So I'm actually quite looking forward to it.
Good stuff. Right, catch Graham's post-match work on the Yorkshire Evening Post website, and you got a post-match podcast. Do you do that kind of thing?
We just do a weekly podcast, the Inside Elland Road podcast.
Excellent. When's that out?
Normally on a Wednesday.
Okay, so catch that next Wednesday once Graham's Wi-Fi has uploaded it, and do check that out. Check out the opposition view. We shall be back tomorrow post-match show with James Belshaw and AN Other, just confirming that, and then back on Monday for full match analysis. Thanks to Graham. Thanks to everyone who's listened in. Do us a favour, hit like if you haven't already. Do hit subscribe. Do consider membership and all the usual appeals, and do check out the link in the description as well. I should say, if you want to treat yourself to some corporate hospitality and get me a kickback in commission, then that would be lovely as well through Seat Unique. But in the meantime, if we don't see you tomorrow, we shall see you soon.